Welcome to the Leadership Purpose with Robin podcast. I'm your host, Robin L. Owens, PhD, and this is where we dive in each week to give advice, tools, and tips for high-achieving women leaders, and we talk about leadership purpose and its importance for you. I am a college professor, and when I am not doing that, I am speaking, writing, coaching, mentoring, and teaching high-achieving women leaders how to find, and not only find, but how to stay in alignment with their leadership purpose so they can make a meaningful difference right there in their career, leadership, or business. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. So glad you're here and that you take time out of your busy day and schedule to listen into our podcast. So appreciate you. And because of that, we were just ranked in the top 5% of podcasts globally, according to Listen Notes. And we couldn't have done it without you. So thank you so much. Appreciate you for listening in. And today we are talking with none other than Jake Ballentine. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Jake Ballentine. Jake is the author of Your Number One Goal. He is the creator of the Number One Goal System for Success. And if that wasn't enough, he's the founder of the Speakers, Authors, and Coaches Network and host of the Mountaintop Motivation Podcast. For years, Jake has been teaching, mentoring, coaching, and inspiring thousands of speakers, authors, and coaches with his particular approach to success and his unique brand of motivation and positivity. And when Jake is not doing all that, he is having fun, enjoying life, going to Disneyland, watching the Los Angeles Dodgers, and going on adventures with his wife, Caitlin, and their now 4-year-old son, Jacob. Welcome, my mentor, my coach, my friend, Jake Ballentine.
Hello, Robin. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
So glad you're here. So glad you're here. I'm so excited. So let's jump right in. I gave a little bit of an introduction, a little bio for folks, but why don't you tell us in your own words first tell us a little bit about you and then about the work you do.
I don't know. That's a broad question. It's hard to decide where to narrow in there, but I'll say, well, unless you had something you wanted to say there, but when it comes down to my work and also who I am individually, I find these things to be very intermingled. And at one time I'd find those things to be very separate. I do this and then I am that. And I have found a lot more joy in my life as I have mingled those two, and to where what I do as the professional, I'm a professional Jake Ballentine. That's what I do for my profession, is I'm a professional me. And as I've done that, I've found so much more joy and passion in my life, in my work, and in every day.
Yes. A professional Jake Ballentine. I love that. All right. So what I know you and I've known you. I've had the pleasure and the honor and joy of knowing you for the past few years as my own mentor and coach. But for people who don't know you and have not met you, how would you describe your work being Jake Ballentine?
Yes. Well, in all reality, like the biggest part of my focus is helping people, number one, define what the vision of their life is. And I define that as, I call that the mountaintop of your life. If you looked at it, and you being in Los Angeles, I grew up in that area as well, grew up in Pasadena, looking at the San Gabriel Mountains, and looking at those mountains, I always looked at them and visioned and dreamed and that kind of stuff. And I said, okay, like that's the representation, is like getting up there. I like the idea of it being very physical, because when it's very physical, you can see that there's a physical path. It's not so confusing. It's not so hard. There's a physical path to get there, but defining that vision or that mountaintop. And then from there, narrowing it down and saying, okay, well, what's the first milestone to go towards there? What's that first milestone? I define that as the number one goal. The number one goal is that first milestone to get towards that vision of the everything. Sometimes when people hear me say, reach your number one goal, they go, yeah, but I got these 6 different goals. I go, great. That's wonderful. That's exactly what the mountaintop is. That's what the mountaintop is. Now, the number one goal, all that is a system of focus to say, what is the next milestone that we are working towards? And I find that when you make something very physical, something that you can see, something that you can picture, it becomes so much easier to have confidence and belief that you can do it, because all of us have walked from point A to point B. All of us have driven in a car from point A to point B, and we understand that I might not know exactly what it looks like because I've never been there before, but I know that this map will take me there. I understand that the map along the way, there might be some detours, there might be some construction, there might be some traffic, there might be some issues where I need to change and adjust, but I'm not changing the location that I'm going. And so what I've done is taking goal achievement and put it into a very physical analogy that people can see. And then in practice, it's a lot easier for people to believe that it's possible and be able to implement one step at a time. Nobody can say that they can't take one step at a time. Obviously, there's some people who can't walk and those kind of things. My friend Alex Plasky, anytime something about walking is brought up, he just says, well, no, I just roll. I'm just rolling, is what he talks about, which is fun, him having a sense of humor about it. But what I mean is like any goal, it's not hard. People want to say, oh, it's hard. This is hard. This is hard. It's not hard when you focus on one step at a time. And if each step is too big, then it's hard. But if you reduce it down to something that, reaching a goal should be as easy as one simple step at a time. It should never be, oh, this is so hard. It's just one step at a time. And that's all it is.
Yes. How'd you come to do this work and this particular focus on, you talked about the mountains and the vision, but how'd you come to do this work?
Well, like everyone, my story's kind of all over the place, been done many different things and gone in different directions. So I first started out in the speaking world in the youth market, speaking to high school students all over the country, been able to speak to hundreds of thousands of teenagers all around the United States. And in that journey, that started off as me just wanting to find something that I could contribute in a positive way. I wanted to have a career that I felt like I was contributing and making a difference, making a living, making a difference. And I wanted to create that. I did that. I created that. I did that for years. Then I had like many people, had some challenges in my life. And those challenges, they either shrink you or make you stronger. And those challenges got me to look at like, okay, what's going on in my life? What do I want to shift and what do I want to change? And I found that when I focused on so many different things at the same time, it was really hard for me to do anything. And when I started narrowing it down and just saying, I need to change everything, I can just throw a dart at the wall and figure out which one I want to focus on. But once I started focusing on one thing at a time, things just became easier and easier and easier. And I started developing that and using that work, going from just working with teenagers to working with adults and helping them with their goals and helping them with the things that they do. In there, I also, like you mentioned, creating the speakers, authors, and coaches network. Something I'm really passionate about is the more that you help people to go and do good, the more ripple effects that creates. But ultimately, my passion, even during that and still doing that, my passion has always been helping individuals see their potential and make it something that feels doable. Your vision is never too big, unless it's not what you want, but there's no vision that's too big. But when it comes to the individual goals, the individual milestones, I believe that the smaller we make those, the more likely we are to reach them, the more likely we are to achieve them. And it's not that we get the goal and then we stop. It's we still have the mountain. We still have the vision of where we're going to. So you reach that next milestone. I just think about them as milestones along the way. And then where did all the analogy come from? I mean, in all honesty, it was just, that's what I like doing in my personal life. That's what I like doing. And like I said, I wanted to mingle these things and actually be me. And a big part of me has always been, that's where I've always gone to dream. And that's where I've always gone to think and to feel inspired, and just kind of came to me, kind of came to me.
Yes, the mountaintop. And, I have been experiencing, of course, your work personally and professionally on my own. And I think it really kind of sunk in across just the big goals of life and the vision. I've been working on that with you. But the other day I had a conversation with my sister, and I think this is a direct influence from your work. She said to me, I have this storage unit. And, over the years, she and her now adult daughter have been storing the Christmas decorations and all the things that they don't use in season. And she says, now it just seems like it's just everything is everywhere. It's kind of labeled, but we don't know. We want to start clearing this out, but it's just overwhelming. I don't know how we could even do this. And so I think as a direct response from just having you in my head, I said, maybe you can just take one theme at a time. Or her daughter is a Girl Scout leader. And so she said, why don't you start with the Girl Scout stuff? 1 month, just do that. And then maybe next month, do the Christmas stuff. And she said, oh my gosh, that's the best idea ever.
Yes.
I've got to tell her right away, this is what we're going to do. And she had a plan and schedule. She was off and running. So she thought that was, just a genius idea. And I thought it was a direct response from listening to you and thinking about how to manage when we have these big goals and how to break it down to the milestones.
Totally. And I think that there's a lot of confusion in the goal achieving world. There's a lot of confusion around these things. And I think that I think it's because many of us use the words goal and vision as a synonym. And I see them as two different things. I see them as two different things. People say, well, the goal, and they'll talk about that as like this huge vision, but then they'll talk about like, hey, what are you going to do? What's the goal? And I think people get confused as to what am I talking about here? And when I say goal, am I talking about dreaming big, or am I talking about the thing that I'm going to do this week? Like, what am I talking about? And I think that sometimes people have this feeling of, I refer to it as goal shaming. And what it is like, oh, you got this goal? That's not big enough. What are you thinking? You got to make it way bigger. Or someone sets a goal and says, oh, that's way too big. You can't do that. And it's like, look, what matters is what actually means something to that person. And I like to take it another step further and say, I think about the vision as the long term. That's the long term. But as we break it down smaller and smaller, I think everything's like, I have goals for today. I don't say like for instance, like people will say like, okay, what's your goal and what's your stretch goal? When people say things like that, I immediately go, you don't understand goal setting. If you say, what's my goal and what's my stretch goal? Like, so what do these things mean? Like, what is it that you're going for? I don't say like, well, today I'm either going to do this or all of this. Like, great, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And I want to be 100% at it, because those small little incremental steps, they just make a massive difference over the long period of time. And I think that a lot of people have this feeling of, I don't know, it also adds this feeling of I can never do enough. When I have this idea of a goal and a stretch goal, it means I'm going to do this. And then when I get there, I'm not going to celebrate. I'm not going to enjoy it. I'm going to keep going. Nothing is ever enough. And I think that is not sustainable long-term. It's so much easier if we say, okay, I'm going to get this goal. I'm going to reach this goal. And when I reach it, I'm going to celebrate, and I'm going to relax. I'm going to rest. And I'm going to say, I'm done. Now I can go and do something else. And then I have energy again for tomorrow. Not everything has to be a grand slam every time. We can hit singles too. And that makes a big difference.
Yeah. A real sense of accomplishment along the way.
Yes.
Yeah. We can hear the passion in your voice as you're talking about your work. So out of all you're doing, tell us the thing that you enjoy the most. I mean, if you could pick one thing, one or two, what really lights you up?
You know, it's interesting because over the last 2 years, there's been so little of this, but just being with people live, speaking at events live, specifically my own events, when I'm doing a long-term event, not just like speaking for an hour. I like speaking for an hour, but when I have the opportunity to speak to an audience over the course of a full day or multiple days, like there's nothing that lights me up more than that, because I get to see actual transformation over the course of it's not a significant amount of time. It's 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and in hours that might seem like a lot of time, but in reality, how much does someone typically grow between Thursday and Saturday? Typically not very much, but in that kind of environment, you can see drastic differences between people from when they walked in the door to when they are going home. And that to me, there's nothing that I enjoy more than that.
Yes. And I had the experience of experiencing you in that setting. And so I see that, and I've seen that. So now you've done quite a bit of work. You have lots of experiences and expertise. Tell us one thing from any area of your professional life or personal life, some word of advice for the listener. And let me tell you who I think the listener is. Well, at least when I created the podcast for high achieving women. And what I mean by high achieving women who are professional, ambitious, goal oriented, often support everyone else in their professional life, support everyone else in their personal life, doing all the things. So I thought, who supports them? Wouldn't it be great to have guests come on from different professional backgrounds to just lend some advice and support to those women who don't normally have permission. People don't even think they need it because of the role they're in, right? And so from your experience and expertise, what's one word of advice or tip that you could give to the listener I just described?
Well, that listener that you just described, and maybe this is pertinent, maybe it isn't, but I think for that listener, it's really important to remember that fulfillment is just as important as success. Maybe even more important. Something Tony Robbins talks about all the time. He says that success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And he lists all sorts of people who have had major successes, but haven't had fulfillment. And when you look at those people, you go, that's not where I want to be. And it doesn't mean that success isn't important. It also doesn't mean that we can't find fulfillment in success. But I believe that it's true success to be able to find fulfillment in a smile, to be able to find fulfillment in a moment. I had an experience once where I was in a period of time where I wasn't experiencing as much joy as I wanted to experience. I was focusing on my work all the time. And in all honesty, I was in a position where in order to feel joy, I needed to have all of my senses engaged. I needed to have these big things to where I could be present. Like later on, I realized like all it was that I needed to feel a feeling of thrill in order to feel present. I needed to feel a feeling of almost overwhelmed to feel present. And that's all I was really after. But I was doing this meditation. I do it on a regular basis. And a part of this meditation was go back to a moment where you felt true joy. And I kept going back to this same moment. And I felt like it was a really good thing. And I think I've shared the story with you before. I think it will ring a bell in a minute. I think you were there when I shared this. But I kept feeling like this was a good thing. I was going back to this moment of joy, and I would feel this moment of joy. But let me paint a picture of this moment. This moment of joy was me and my wife together in Dodger Stadium with 60,000 other people singing along with Sir Paul McCartney singing the na-na-nas of Hey Jude. And that moment. So what I was realizing, like I kept going back there, and it was this cool moment. I mean, I have goosebumps right now just thinking about it. It was incredible. But what I was telling myself was that in order for me to feel joy, what I needed was I just needed to get together with 60,000 other people. I needed to get the biggest rock star in history in the metaphorical room. I guess we were outside, but at the venue, singing with production that was worth millions of dollars. That's it. That's all I need to do. And what I was telling myself was that is what was required for joy. And once I had that realization, I went, no wonder I'm not experiencing joy. I'm saying I can't feel joy unless I have that. And instead I said, okay, well, here's my next, I'm an achiever. So how can I achieve something? How can I set a goal around this? That's what we do. And so I said, well, can I feel joy today in something simple? What's the simplest thing I can find joy in? Can I find joy in a laughter? Can I find joy in a conversation with a friend? Can I find joy in a smile? Can I find joy in the smile of a stranger? Can I find joy in a challenge? Can I do that? Can someone cut me off? And can I find joy in that situation? Some people might say, no, you can't. But the truth is that there's the facts, and then there's the story that we tell ourselves about the facts. So the facts are this person cut in front of me. That's the fact. I don't know the rest of the story. Everything else from that point forward is made up. I could make up the story. That guy's a jerk. He doesn't care about other people. He's probably and fill in the blank of some other story that I have. Insert opposite political party from whatever one you are a part of, whatever that is. And we can make those statements and talk about how things aren't how they used to be. Or I could be with whoever I'm with right then, and I could say, that was funny, or that was interesting that guy did that. What's the funniest story we can make up about why that person did that? What is it that they're doing? So either they weren't paying attention or they don't care. I don't know which one it is, but let's say they weren't paying attention. Maybe, why weren't they paying attention? Well, they're not paying attention because they just found out that their they're actually a CIA member and they just got on, they're on this chase, they're on this whatever, but I can make that up and I can feel joy in a moment that maybe used to trigger frustration and upset. The facts and the story that we tell ourselves about the facts are two very different things. And we think that the one influences the other, and they really don't. It's what we decide to say. So for that person listening, learn to find joy in every moment, not just the big moments, not just the success, not just the thing. Learn how to find joy. And the cool thing is that joy does not come from success. Success comes from joy. And the more joy that we have, the more success we're going to have.
Yes. Yes. Success comes from joy. Yes. I resonate with that wholeheartedly. Now, as you know, the podcast is Leadership Purpose. And so my work is around leadership purpose. And so when you hear that term, leadership purpose, what comes to your mind?
What comes to my mind when I used to speak in the high school market, as I used to speak to, somewhere between 60 and 100 high school audiences a year. And one of the big focuses, I had a couple different speeches I would do, but one of them was a leadership talk. And it was called Every Student is a Leader. And the concept behind that was that every single one of you are a leader, whether you have a title or not. There's a leader with a capital L, someone who has a title, and a leader that's just everyone with a lowercase l. And what I would talk about is whether you know it or not, there is somebody who is looking at you. There's somebody who's watching you. There's someone that's following you, and they're looking at you for your lead. And you have a choice. What I would tell these teenagers is you have a choice whether or not by your actions every single day, whether you're going to lead them in a positive way or you're going to lead them in a negative way. And I'd say the same thing to the people here and the thought of leadership purposes. Rather than aspiring for that next promotion to give you a new title, think about where you are right now and realize that your actions are how you lead other people, and that you have more influence on people than you realize it. And even you have more influence on those that technically lead you than you realize it, because they're trying to do the best for you that they can. And if you show up in one way, it's going to influence how they're leading versus if you're showing up in another way. And so if I say leadership purpose, first thing I think about is how can you be leading? Not how can you already are leading. You already are leading every moment of the day. If there's people around you, you are leading. How can we be more intentional with our leadership on a daily basis? That's my thoughts on it.
Yes, be intentional. And I do think about when I describe the listener, and I mean, lots of people listen to the podcast, not just the women I described, but in my thinking, my own thinking about leadership is exactly what you're saying. And so the listeners I had in my mind may be in official leadership roles, unofficial leadership roles, or a leader of their own life and home. And so I think about it in very similar ways. So now, do you think having this leadership purpose is important? If so, why? If not, why not?
I think it's absolutely important. It's what we're doing on a daily basis. I just think that, I don't know, maybe I'm just in a weird place right now or whatever. Maybe I'm just in a hippie phase of my life or something. But like, I just think about it. I think that that capital L means a lot less than we think it does. Because even those people with the leadership position, with the title, they're not really a leader unless they are leading authentically. And I think that even if one aspires for that leadership position, the way to do it is by leading day by day with our actions, because that's what really affects people. That's what really makes an impact on people. And so I think having purpose of leading, like leadership, and sometimes I think about purpose and intentionality as very similar. So what's the purpose? Because you can use the word purpose in two different ways. So you could say on purpose and mean that like you did that intentionally, or you could say on purpose, meaning that you are living on and within your purpose in life. And I don't know the origins for those, but we use that one word in two very different ways. So if you say on purpose leadership, you could say that that's intentional leadership. And I think that that's really what it is that inspires people. And if we're not living with intentionality with how we are acting day in and day out, doesn't matter what our leadership title is, we're not going to make an impact on people.
Yeah,
so I think it's very important.
Yes, yes. Okay, so the time is going by so fast. Is there something that you'd like to say that came to your mind while we were talking before we tell people how they can get in touch with you? Any last thoughts?
No, I just thoroughly enjoyed this conversation about talking about leadership and purpose and how it's all tied together. And I think I'll go back to that thought before about joy and experiencing joy. I just want to emphasize how important that is to find joy in every single action. So if you look at, right now, someone who's listening there's probably somebody who is stressed out about something. And when you look at that, how often have you how often you, Robin, how often have you been stressed about something? And then the moment that's solved, you immediately go to the next thing that you're stressed about.
Yes.
And that next thing that you're stressed about is just as much life and death as the previous thing. But 10 minutes earlier, you weren't even aware of it. You weren't thinking about it because you had something bigger that you were stressed out about. Then therefore you go, is any of this even real? Is any of this even helping me? And I think that oftentimes we lie to ourselves and we tell ourselves that the stress is helping us. We think that somehow it's helping us in fixing the situation. Like people even say things like, well, how can I not worry about this? This is important. Worrying about something and doing something about something are two very, very different things. You don't have to worry about something in order to do what's required to solve that problem. So we have all these things connected. And I think a lot of it comes down to our childhood. We've been conditioned that work is punishment. Literally, we have been conditioned from time of child that work is punishment. And it's almost like we feel like the only way we can be successful is if we're awful to ourselves. We have to be that teacher that's constantly writing us. You have to be that manager that's constantly writing to get that thing done. It doesn't even matter if the deadline's in 2 weeks. We know that we'd get an A+ if we got it in today. And there's never a good enough time. I think if we can just let go of that stuff and realize that if you are living on purpose, you will do the work whether you're stressed or not. And if you're finding that you only do the work when you're stressed, it might be time for a new purpose because maybe you're not doing something that's fulfilling you in the way that you want. So you asked what other thoughts I had. That was it.
And that's a good thought to leave with us as we can think about it as we, kind of continue on. I know for me, just being in the interview, sometimes weeks and days later, I'm still reflecting on the conversation. Is definitely one of them, especially related to stress. So I really appreciate that. And Jake, I said before we came on and maybe when we were on, I really appreciate you being here. And I invited you. This is a special episode because we are celebrating our 1-year anniversary of the podcast.
Yes, awesome.
I feel like it's a great honor to have you. And I kind of hope that you would be able to do it at this time so I could celebrate and honor you in appreciation and also celebrate the 1 year of the anniversary. So thank you for participating in this way.
Well, you're welcome. And I want to say congratulations for that. I don't know what the numbers are, but I'm willing to bet that the percentage of podcasts that have made it to episode 100, I'm guessing are fewer than 2%, maybe even lower than that, maybe 1%, maybe half a percentage point. And so I think it's really important to celebrate yourself for the success of just going and making it this far and thinking about, it'd be cool if maybe you've already done this. I don't know, but it'd be cool if you did like an episode of, top 10 things I learned from the first 100 episodes or, from 100 people that I've interviewed. Like there's so many cool things to be done there. And that's a real accomplishment.
Thank you. We're celebrating the 1 year. So yeah.
Well, 1 year. That's what I mean.
Yeah. But I like that idea of going back even now and just kind of reflecting on, what I've learned. It's a good lesson for me and for others. So I appreciate it.
Sorry, I said 100, but I meant 1 year who have actually kept going this far. That's just so rare. And I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, thanks. I'm guessing, and I think I'm right. I'm guessing lots of people are saying, I want to hear more about Jake Ballentine and what he's doing and how to reach my goals or whatever they're thinking. And if they are thinking that, if I am correct, how can they reach you?
Awesome. Well, head to yournumberonegoal.com. Join us in the next round whenever you're listening to this. Join us in the next round of the number one goal 30-day challenge. That's the place to join. That's the place to start us at. You can find all that information at yournumber1goal.com. That is all written out. So it's not the number one, it's your number one goal, all written out.com. And come and join us in the next 30-day challenge.
Great. Thank you, Jake. Thank you. And everybody will have that in the show notes so you can have that for you. And if you want to be in touch with me, you can contact me on my website, robinlowens.com, robinlowens.com. And I'd love to hear from you on social media, hear your comments about the podcast. All social media channels, you can reach me at Robin L. Owens, PhD, Robin L. Owens, PhD. And I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, this is Dr. Robin. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Leadership Purpose with Robin podcast. If you enjoyed it, head on over and rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop every week, and I can't wait to hang out with you again soon. Meanwhile, this is Robin signing off. See you next time.